Welcome, everyone, to CDO's Magazine series of one-on-one interviews with CDOs, data leaders, and key influencers. I'm your host, Robert Lutton, Vice President, Sandhill Consultants. I'm coming to you today from Toronto, Canada, working with the CDO Magazine. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing Chris Stevens. Chris is a CDO, Chief Data Officer, in residence at Insight Partners and an adjunct faculty at the Carnegie Mellon University. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks, Robert. It's great to be here.
It's a pleasure, and thank you for giving us some of your time today. So, Chris, I normally do this. I have a look at the people's backgrounds and things like that before we do the interview. And reading up on you, I can see that, we've got some of the people we interview are storytellers. They tell us they're storytellers. Some of them are advisors, and some of them are communicators. With your background, it seems that you've got all these qualities and more. And if I can ask, maybe in a brief couple of minutes, how did you get to where you are today in the role of CDO and also at the professor at the Carnegie Mellon University? And how did you arrive at where you're at today? I think it's often good for us to hear a little bit about the background about how you got to where you are today.
The short answer is by accident, I would say. So, if you look at my background, and I can give an overview, but if you look at my background, I've kind of done all the things in the data space, right? And there's lots of ways to, progress through your career. And my progression, certainly through my career and through my life, has not been linear in any fashion.
Right.
So as you alluded to, right now I'm doing a couple of things. One of them is Chief Data Officer in Residence at Insight Partners. Insight Partners, as lots of you probably know, is one of the leading VC firms in the technology and data space. And so I have the privilege of working with Insight Partners in this role. And what I do there is advise their portfolio companies on the customer profile of a Chief Data Officer, go-to-market strategy, helping with their pitches and those kinds of things. It allows me to participate as a part of an executive network that Insight Partners brings to bear for the benefit of their portfolio companies and, quite frankly, for the benefit of the executives that participate. So I'm having a lot of fun doing that. Some organic kind of offshoot startup advisory work that I'm doing similar to that. You asked about Carnegie Mellon. I happen to live in Pittsburgh, so there maybe my number one qualification for that is that I happen to live here. But so again, just a wonderful privilege that I've been able to be a part of this program at Carnegie Mellon. I'm really doing two things there. So first, we have a Chief Data Officer certification program through the Heinz College's Exec Ed track. And so, generally speaking, kind of mid-senior career professionals participate in this program, and they get certified on all the things that it sort of takes to be a Chief Data Officer, the technical and cultural and change management and all these different things. And so it's just a wonderful thing to be a part of. And then we're taking some of that curriculum and working with different parts of the United States government, teaching leaders there about the principles of data-driven transformation and data-driven leadership and so on. So those two things combined fill up a little bit of my time. Like I said, I'm in Pittsburgh with 5 kids, so that fills up a lot of my time too. But your question was kind of, how did I get here? So I've been in industry, enterprise, CDO or CDO equivalent roles for the last 5 or 6 years across insurance, high tech, and retail. Geico's, Zendesk, and American Eagle Outfitters, to be specific. But then prior to that, I ran this global data science practice at a company called Pivotal Software. And we were, advising organizations around the world on, modern data practices, modern data principles, building out use cases and applications centered specifically in the data science space. Prior to that, I was in product management. I worked at SAS, the analytics software company, for about 5 years or so. And I did some interesting product management work there. And forever ago, this is before all this stuff, I started my career as a practitioner, right? I was doing a lot of data management, model building, and analytics, primarily in the consumer packaged goods space. So, starting at the beginning and moving forward, just kind of weaving my way through different aspects of the data and analytics, field, in a very broad sense, from practitioner to product to some sales, even in business development, and then into practitioner and executive roles.
I think that kind of background that you just explained, especially teaching at the Heinz University or the Heinz College on the CDO certification program. I am familiar with that program. It is a great program. I think that knowledge that you bring, shines through, and I certainly hope that we'll be able to share some of your knowledge in today's conversation. So with that, just jumping right in. So first of all, thank you for giving us the background on that. Now, we kind of sort of broad stroke some general topics, and one of the topics was on knowledge graphs. And we wanted to know, in your opinion, and if you've seen maybe the benefit that knowledge graphs have given to organizations, but in your opinion, how should an organization go about leveraging knowledge graphs to improve the organization's data management and decision-making capabilities?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'm going to take one step backwards before I answer your question.
Absolutely.
And, the thing that's interesting to me that I think will weave through the questions that we're going to talk through is there's so much hype right now, deservedly so, around AI generated out of ChatGPT and LLM and Bard coming out of Google yesterday. And there's so much, well-deserved hype and incredible innovation that's happening in that space, right?
Agreed.
I don't want to use the next 45 minutes or so to talk about that directly. But what I actually think is really interesting, and I'm coming at this from a practitioner's perspective, my last couple of jobs is as a CDO, coming at this from kind of the VC perspective, thinking about this from the insight partners perspective, and also then the early stage companies that they're involved in. What I think is really interesting is the next, whatever it's going to be, decades, years, whatever it might be. I think a lot of the value creation, I'm not ready to say most or all of it, but is going to be in adjacencies to bringing on AI type technologies or capabilities into an organization. So what I mean by that is, you asked me about knowledge graphs, right?
Yeah.
How do I organize my data in such a way that, a LLM, a ChatGPT, some other generalized AI model might be able to find, discover, and map the relationships that exist in my data connected to the outcomes that I'm trying to drive, right? And
I think that's a great aspect, because a lot of people are experimenting about with it. I hear it in almost every discussion that I talk about it, but not a lot of people know how to actually structure the information ready for an AI, whether Google or Microsoft or whatever. So we can keep on this on each one of those questions. And if you've got a thought or a process that you can impart to people that are just beginning to explore, hey, I've used knowledge graphs, but really to leverage it for the power of AI and AI capabilities, you want to do this. We are all for that. Please, you've got the whole time to kind of look at it from that angle. So let's go ahead. And so how would you structure that?
Yeah, I mean, thinking about a knowledge graph, to me, this is, some emerging technology. I personally can't speak to a success story where I've implemented a knowledge graph. Like lots of other folks, I've built out graph technologies and, are mapping customer attributes and whatnot. Think of a customer 360 kind of use case, pretty typical for like a graph kind of technology. But pulling the kind of semantics out of that graph and mapping that enterprise knowledge layer, that kind of semantic layer in that graph representation of those relationships and that knowledge, and then being able to connect that to your existing data estate, whether you're a modern data stack person and you're, orienting around, the hyperscalers and their native data capabilities, or Snowflake Databricks, whatever you might be doing there, like mapping and connecting that enterprise knowledge through the semantic layer into that, right? I think is, as far as I'm aware, is relatively emerging technology. There's a couple interesting players in that space that I can think of. But, as a data leader, thinking about, like you said, okay, a lot of people are talking about AI and what are the use cases and how am I going to implement this in my business? And, back to my kind of adjacency thing, the thing that I think is so interesting, I keep using the auto industry as an example, and you take the city of Detroit, and
Right.
everyone's familiar with the troubles they've gone through. But part of that was because every job in the entire Detroit area had something to do connected to the auto industry. They didn't all make cars.
Yeah.
Some of them made ball bearings, and some of them made things that you were used to make ball bearings or whatever, right? And so I think there's a ton of value to be created there. And then as a practitioner, like your board, your executives, they're going to want to know, what's our AI strategy? What are our AI use cases? How are we going to employ AI in our business? And then I think going out into the next circle, sort of outside of AI, and saying, well, how are we going to organize our data? Right? If we imagine, being able to pull intelligence out of all your customer service interactions that are in some textual form, or think about all the documentation that exists in an insurance company around claims, or in the legal industry, all the parsing through documents to find case law and whatnot, right? All those things, like, okay, those are probably obvious examples of maybe where AI or LLM or whatever might impact an industry, but what's the data platform necessary in order to do that, right? How do you organize and map your data in order to let that happen, right? That's where I think a knowledge graph can kind of come into play.
So just on the knowledge graph, how would you sort of figure out, how would you talk to a client about updating and keeping the knowledge graph as accurate as possible as they perhaps integrate it to their existing mapping layers, as you said?
Yeah, I mean, what I think is interesting about that is it plays into a lot of the modern sort of operational or operating model thinking about data and how does work, and that is distributed responsibility models. Like, set aside distributed technology patterns and distributed systems design, but distributed responsibility models, and getting out of the sort of bureaucracy of insights that data teams accidentally become, much to our dismay, right? So that your knowledge graph, for example, is maintained, updated, and managed in a distributed fashion. Nobody knows more about the claims data, claims process, claims interactions than claims agents or people that work in claims, right? Or like I said, in the legal aspect, like, I guess they're probably paralegals, but whoever it is that is deeply ingrained in legal research, those people know better than I do. Or me and my team of engineers and data professionals. So don't ask me to do it. I'll provide tools and platforms that enable you to do it, right? And that fits into this, like I said, kind of the paradigms that people are exploring in distributed domain ownership and those kinds of things.
We would like to thank you for your time and insights, and we hope that we get a chance to have you come back and share your knowledge, especially on the AI side of the house again in the future.
I would love that. Yeah, thank you very much. This has been wonderful. Thanks for your time, Robert. Natalie, thanks for joining us, and this has been great. Thank you.
And for our listeners, please visit cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews. Thank you.